Hey there, ghost story enthusiasts. Grab a cozy blanket and maybe leave a light on because, boy, do I have a spine-tingling tale for you. Ever heard of Hrapp, the most terrifying ghost in Iceland? No? Well, buckle up because this story is about to take you on a wild ride through the land of fire and ice, where the line between the living and the dead isn't always as clear as we'd like it to be. Picture this. It's 10th century Iceland, a time when Vikings roamed the seas and superstitions ran as deep as the fjords. Our story begins with Hrapp, a wealthy farmer with a temper hotter than the country's geysers. Now, I know we all have that one relative who's a bit of a handful at family gatherings, but Hrapp, he took it to a whole new level. As he lay on his deathbed, instead of sharing words of wisdom or expressing love for his family, Hrapp had a bizarre final request. "Bury me standing up in my doorway," he demanded, his eyes glinting with an eerie light. Can you imagine? Most of us worry about how comfy our final resting place will be, but this guy wanted to be propped up like some kind of macabre doorman. Now you might be thinking, why on earth would anyone agree to such a creepy request? Well, my friend, in those days, ignoring a dying person's last wish was a big no-no. It's like when your grandma insists you take that ugly sweater she knitted. You just smile and nod, even if it makes you look like a deranged Christmas tree. So, Hrapp's family, probably wondering what they did in a past life to deserve this, dutifully buried him upright in the doorway. I bet they were thinking, well, at least he can't cause any more trouble now, right? Oh, how wrong they were. If only they knew they were about to star in their own real-life horror movie. Well, folks, it didn't take long for the nightmare to begin. Hrapp's ghost wasted no time in making its presence known. And let me tell you, he wasn't there to make friendly small talk over a cup of mead. Remember how I mentioned Hrapp had a bit of a temper? Well, death did nothing to improve his mood. His spirit began haunting the area with a vengeance that would make even the scariest movie poltergeist say, "Whoa, dude, take it down a notch." But it wasn't just about rattling chains and making spooky noises. Oh no, Hrapp's ghost had a much more sinister agenda. The poor servants of the household bore the brunt of Hrapp's supernatural wrath. Imagine showing up to work, expecting to milk some cows or churn some butter, and instead, finding yourself in a life-or-death game of cat and mouse with an angry ghost. It's like the world's worst employee benefits package. Join our team. We offer competitive wages, free room and board, and a high chance of being murdered by your boss's vengeful spirit. The saga tells us that Hrapp killed most of his servants during his hauntings. Now, I don't know about you, but if I saw my coworkers dropping like flies due to ghostly shenanigans, I'd be updating my resume faster than you can say paranormal activity. One particularly chilling account tells of a young maid who felt an icy hand on her shoulder while tending to the hearth. When she turned, she found Hrapp's ghostly face inches from her own, his mouth open in a silent scream. Now, I've had some awkward close encounters in my life, but this takes the cake. That poor girl probably set a new land speed record as she fled the house, never to return. And honestly, can you blame her? The death toll at Hrappstaðir, that's Hrapp's farm, for those of you not fluent in Icelandic, mounted at an alarming rate. Within the first year of Hrapp's haunting, nearly half of the farm's staff had met violent, inexplicable ends. We're talking broken necks, mysterious falls, and even cases of sudden paralyzing fear that stopped hearts. It was like Final Destination meets Downton Abbey, but with more sheep and fewer period costumes. The once prosperous farm began to feel more like a tomb. Each day brought new horrors and the constant oppressive feeling of being watched. You know that creepy sensation you get when you think someone's staring at you in a crowded room? Imagine that, but all the time. And the one staring is a murderous ghost. Yeah, not exactly conducive to a good night's sleep, is it? Now you might be wondering, why would Hrapp turn on his own household with such vicious intent? Good question. Some folks speculated that the unnatural method of his burial had corrupted his spirit. It's like when you store leftovers in the wrong kind of container. Leave it too long, and things start to get funky. Only in this case, instead of moldy lasagna, you get a homicidal ghost. Others whispered that Hrapp had made a dark pact in life, selling his soul for wealth and power. If that's true, I'd say he got a raw deal. Pro tip: if you're going to sell your soul, at least negotiate for something cool like the ability to eat all the pizza you want without gaining weight. Wealth and power are so cliché. As the body count rose, the unthinkable became a reality. Hrapp's widow, Vigdis, and their son, along with any surviving staff, were forced to flee their ancestral home. Can you imagine the level of terror it would take to abandon everything you own? Your home, your livelihood, generations of family history, all left behind because your dead husband couldn't quite grasp the concept of rest in peace. The decision to leave wasn't made lightly. For months, Vigdis tried everything she could think of to rid their home of Hrapp's malevolent spirit. She brought in priests for exorcisms, but those ended in failure, and in one terrifying instance, the death of a young acolyte. Yikes! Talk about a tough day at work for those clergymen. I bet ghost removal wasn't in their job description. They even tried carving protective runes into the doorways. You know, like those live, laugh, love signs people hang in their homes, but with more "please don't kill us" energy. Sadly, Hrapp's ghost seemed to only grow stronger with each attempt to banish him. It's like he was the supernatural equivalent of a gym rat, getting buffer with every exorcism rep. Finally, after a particularly violent night that saw 3 more servants fall victim to Hrapp's wrath, Vigdis knew they had no choice. With tears in her eyes, she gathered the remaining household and announced their departure. I can just imagine that conversation. "All right, everyone, pack your bags. We're moving out. No, we can't take the family heirlooms. Yes, I know the housing market is terrible right now. No, we can't stay just one more night, unless you want to be ghost food." The exodus from Hrappstadir was a somber affair. Wagons were loaded with only the barest essentials, as many refused to take anything from the cursed house. Smart move, if you ask me. The last thing you want is to realize you accidentally packed a haunted butter churn or a possessed sheep shear. As they passed through the gate for the last time, many swore they could hear Hrapp's mocking laughter on the wind. Talk about adding insult to injury. It's bad enough to be driven from your home by a ghost, but does he have to be so smug about it? The abandoned farm quickly fell into ruin. Fields once lush with crops withered and died. The great hall, once filled with warmth and laughter, now stood silent and foreboding. It was like the world's worst before and after home renovation show. This week on Extreme Makeover Ghost Edition, we turn a thriving farm into a desolate wasteland. You won't believe the results. For Vigdis and her son, the cost of their escape was immeasurable. Not only had they lost their home and livelihood, but they also bore the stigma of Hrapp's curse. Many in the surrounding areas shunned them, fearing that Hrapp's malevolent influence might have followed them. It's like being the kid with cooties in school, but instead of cooties, it's a murderous ghost. Not exactly a great conversation starter at parties. And Hrappstadir faded into legend, but legends have a way of attracting the brave or the foolish. Enter Olaf, a young chieftain from a neighboring district, who scoffed at the tales of Hrapp's ghost. Now, I don't know about you, but when I hear about a place being haunted by a murderous ghost, my first thought isn't, "Hey, that sounds like a great real estate opportunity." But Olaf, bless his Viking heart, saw a chance to expand his lands and vowed to reclaim Hrappstadir from the grip of superstition. Olaf arrived at Hrappstadir on a cold, moonless night. As he approached the dilapidated house, an unnatural stillness seemed to settle over the land. Even the wind died away, leaving an eerie silence broken only by the sound of Olaf's footsteps. It was like nature itself was holding its breath, thinking, "Oh boy, here we go again. Another fool about to get his ghostly comeuppance." Pushing open the creaking door, Olaf stepped into the musty darkness of the abandoned hall. At first, all seemed quiet. Olaf began to relax, convinced that the tales of Hrapp's ghost were nothing more than old wives' tales. Oh, sweet summer child. Haven't you ever watched a horror movie? That's exactly when the scary stuff starts to happen. As he made his way towards the kitchen, where Hrapp's body was said to be buried, the air grew thick and cold. Shadows danced on the walls, cast by no discernible light source. It was like the world's worst disco party, and Olaf was the unwitting guest of honor. And then, in a moment that would haunt Olaf for the rest of his days, he came face to face with Hrapp's vengeful spirit. The ghostly figure of Hrapp materialized before him, its eyes burning with otherworldly hatred. I bet Olaf was really regretting his life choices at that moment. Olaf, rooted to the spot in terror, watched as Hrapp's spectral form lunged at him with inhuman speed. The chieftain felt an icy grip close around his throat, stealing his breath and chilling him to his very soul. In that moment, Olaf understood the true horror that had driven Hrapp's family from their home. It was like the world's worst job interview, where instead of asking about your 5-year plan, the interviewer tries to strangle you with ghostly hands. Through sheer force of will, and probably a healthy dose of panic-induced adrenaline, Olaf managed to break free from Hrapp's grasp. He fled from the house, his heart pounding in his chest, the sound of Hrapp's unearthly laughter echoing in his ears. As he reached the safety of his horse, Olaf looked back to see Hrapp's ghost standing in the doorway. A malevolent grin spread across its spectral face. Olaf's encounter spread quickly through the region, reigniting fears and speculation about Hrapp's curse. Some praised Olaf for his bravery, while others condemned his foolishness for disturbing the ghost. But all agreed on one thing: Hrapp's evil was very real, and something had to be done to put an end to it once and for all. It was like the medieval Icelandic version of a town hall meeting. But instead of discussing potholes and property taxes, they were debating the best way to evict a murderous ghost. Desperate to end the haunting, local chieftain Hoskuld ordered Hrapp's body exhumed. Now, I don't know about you, but digging up a known murderous ghost doesn't sound like the best idea to me. It's like poking a sleeping bear, if the bear was dead, angry, and had supernatural powers. A group of men, fortified by prayer and liberal amounts of alcohol, because let's face it, you'd need a drink or 10 to face this task, set out to Hrappstadir to dig up Hrapp's remains. As they approached the threshold where Hrapp was buried, many reported feeling an oppressive weight in the air, as if some unseen force was trying to push them back. It was like walking through invisible molasses, if molasses could also fill you with existential dread. As the men began to dig, the air grew colder, and strange whispers seemed to echo around them. Several of the diggers fled in terror, and honestly, can you blame them? I've noped out of situations far less scary than this. But those who remained pressed on, driven by a mixture of duty and morbid curiosity. Finally, their shovels struck something solid. With trembling hands, they cleared away the last of the earth, revealing Hrapp's burial site. And let me tell you, what they found was straight out of a horror movie's deleted scenes. You know, the ones too scary to make the final cut. Despite years in the ground, Hrapp's corpse was perfectly preserved. I'm not talking about, oh, he looks pretty good for a dead guy. Preserved. I mean, did someone forget to tell this corpse it's supposed to be decomposing? Preserved. His skin was unmarked by decay, his eyes still open in a terrifying, lifeless stare. It was as if death itself had taken one look at Hrapp and said, "Nope, not dealing with this one. You're on your own, buddy." The men recoiled in horror, many crossing themselves and muttering prayers for protection. I bet a few of them were wishing they'd called in sick that day. "Sorry, boss, can't make it to the ghost excavation." Hoskuld, summoning all his courage, approached the corpse for a closer look. Now, I don't know about you, but getting a closer look at a supernaturally preserved corpse isn't high on my to-do list. It's right up there with juggle angry porcupines and take a relaxing lava bath. As Hoskuld examined the body, he noted with growing unease that Hrapp's flesh was cold but pliable, not stiff as a long-dead body should be. It was like poking a really creepy stress ball. But the most disturbing part? Some swore they saw Hrapp's eyes move, tracking their movements with malicious intent. Talk about giving someone the evil eye. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community. How could a body remain so well preserved after years in the ground? It was like Hrapp had discovered the world's most effective anti-aging cream, and the secret ingredient was pure evil. Some saw it as proof of Hrapp's wicked nature, suggesting that he had made a pact with dark forces that preserved him even in death. Others wondered if Hrapp had ever truly died at all, and if his ghostly appearances were something far more sinister than a mere haunting. Maybe he was just really committed to playing the longest game of hide-and-seek in history. With all other options exhausted, the people resorted to drastic measures. Because when you're dealing with a supernaturally preserved corpse that might be an undead menace, it's time to break out the big guns. Or in this case, the big flames. Hrapp's unnaturally preserved body was burned to ashes, and those ashes scattered into the sea. It was like the world's most terrifying beach barbecue, followed by the least relaxing trip to the shore ever. The decision to burn Hrapp's body wasn't made lightly. I mean, can you imagine that town hall meeting? All right, folks, today's agenda. Should we set our local ghost on fire? All in favor, say aye, preferably loud enough to drown out the sound of spectral screaming. Many feared that such a drastic action would only enrage Hrapp's spirit further. It's like when you try to cancel your gym membership, and they keep charging you anyway. Sometimes, trying to get rid of something just makes it stick around more stubbornly. But Hoskuld, still shaken from his close encounter with Hrapp's creepy corpse, insisted it was the only way to ensure the ghost could never return. Talk about taking one for the team. I hope they at least gave him a world's bravest ghost burner mug or something. So they built a massive pyre on the beach, far from Hrappstadir and any other dwellings. Smart move. The last thing they needed was Hrapp's ghost deciding to haunt the local tiki bar instead. As they laid Hrapp's body on the wood, witnesses reported a sudden gust of wind that nearly blew out their torches. Some even claimed to hear a furious howl coming from the corpse itself. It was like Mother Nature herself was saying, guys, are you sure about this? Because I've got a bad feeling. But Hoskuld, bless his Viking heart, wasn't about to chicken out now. He personally lit that pyre, probably thinking, well, if this doesn't work, at least I'll go down in history as the guy who tried to barbecue a ghost. The flames that consumed Hrapp's body were anything but normal. Witnesses described them burning with an unnatural intensity, shifting between deep purple and sickly green. It was like a Jimi Hendrix light show, but with 100% more burning corpse. Thick black smoke poured from the fire, forming shapes that some swore resembled twisted, screaming faces. As the fire reached its peak, a bone-chilling shriek echoed across the beach, causing several onlookers to flee in terror. Can you blame them? When the flames finally died down, nothing remained of Hrapp, but a pile of ashes. These were gathered into a consecrated urn, because apparently even ghost ashes need fancy containers, and taken out to sea. I can just imagine the conversation on the boat. Careful with that urn, Bjorn. If you drop it, you're diving in after it. I am not dealing with a water ghost on top of everything else. As the ashes were scattered into the waves, the gathered crowd held their breath, half expecting some new horror to emerge from the depths. But the sea remained calm, accepting Hrapp's remains without incident. It was almost anticlimactic, really. After all that drama, you'd expect at least a ghostly whale to jump out of the water or something. In the days that followed, a sense of cautious optimism spread through the region. The oppressive atmosphere that had hung over Hrapp for so long seemed to lift. Brave souls who ventured to the abandoned farm reported no signs of supernatural activity. It was like the world's most terrifying weight had been lifted off their shoulders. Slowly, life began to return to normal. People started to relax, to laugh again. They even began to joke about the whole ordeal. Remember when we were all terrified of Hrapp's ghost? Now the scariest thing we have to deal with is Olaf's cooking. But even as the ashes settled, whispers persisted. Some claim that on stormy nights, when the wind howls across the abandoned fields of Hrappstadir, the ghostly figure of a man can still be seen, standing guard over a home long since lost to time and terror. Could Hrapp's vengeful spirit still linger, waiting for unwary travelers to stumble into his domain? Or is it just a really dedicated local tour guide trying to drum up business? The saga of Hrapp serves as a chilling reminder of the power of belief and the enduring nature of fear. It speaks to our fascination with the supernatural and our deep-seated anxiety about what might lie beyond the veil of death. Whether you see it as a literal account of ghostly activity or a metaphorical tale about the consequences of a life poorly lived, one thing is certain. The story of Hrapp continues to captivate and terrify audiences to this day. So, the next time you visit Iceland, you might want to think twice before exploring any abandoned farms. For in the land of fire and ice, where ancient sagas blend with harsh reality, who knows what long-dead terrors might be waiting to make your acquaintance. Just remember, if you hear someone asking to be buried standing up, maybe suggest a nice cremation instead. It could save everyone a lot of trouble in the long run.